Well, Justin, thank you for joining me today. My aunt was very excited for this one. I was over at her house this last weekend, and actually, you know what? One second, my mom was excited too. I'll be right back. We're still live, Justin. Hold on. My mom was excited about this one, and she went to the store. And we had to do this. I do this whenever I have CPG people on. I got some, obviously.
Oh,
I got
cool.
some butter. Yeah.
From
So
Target,
I
looks like.
liked. Yeah, I like the vanilla one. I've been munching on that one the last
Ah,
few
sweet
days.
tooth.
Yep, I am definitely a sweet tooth. Um, the regular almond's pretty good. I think this would go really good in a smoothie, just the regular one. But anyways, nut butter. Justin, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about who you are and introduce yourself to the audience. So the floor is yours.
Introduce myself. Sure. So let's see, where do I start? I My name's Justin. I started a nut butter company, gosh, almost 20 some years ago now, out of Boulder, Colorado.
Mhm.
And I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I grew up near Pittsburgh. And my dad was a dentist, and my mom, was a, speech pathologist, and then she did some hearing, and then she had a natural foods company that her father started that she worked at for a little bit. And I grew up in a small town, and I really credit to growing up in a small town near Pittsburgh in Western Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh, that really gave me my motivations. Right, grew up in a small town. It was, we were outside building forts, playing in the wilderness. Um, and I really credit that experience to kind of shaping my life and for where I live and why I live the way I do now.
Okay, so as a kid growing up, I mean, what were some of the things that you were doing that you feel like have played out in your, well, ultimately your career the last 20 years?
Gosh, there's so many things, right? I think that everything from being forced, out of the house and to not come back until it's dinner time. You have to
Hmm.
be creative and find ways to stay busy and to entertain yourself and use fantasy to create all these fun little, activities. And then even, when I was in school, I played sports. And I really think organized sports are great. Team sports just as much as individual sports, because in life and in business, right, it's about teamwork. And if you don't know how to work with others and train with others and practice with others and set goals and practice towards those goals and then accept defeat and then celebrate success with other
Hmm.
people, you're going to have a really hard time, building an organization and a team. And so I enjoy team sports a lot. And and what else can I say about my childhood? I think that really just being curious. I was always the kid asking tons of questions and wanted to know how everything worked. And I think my curiosity and creativity, but mostly curiosity, is what really I think drove a lot of things that have been super helpful to me. Especially now.
Did you when you were little, did you tinker with things like with just objects and things around the house? Did you play with them to try to figure out how they worked, or were you more of, it sounded like you asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, I would say I was a tinkerer. I would gosh, I kind of got in a lot of trouble, but not like doing bad things, but just not following the rules, right?
Yeah.
And and I kind of live my life where I only follow the rules that make sense. Now, clearly
Mm,
to me, right?
right.
I would never do something that would hurt someone or that would cause, pain or suffering on someone else. But if there's a rule that just doesn't make any, like, doesn't have logic in it, um, I usually break them. And I kind of feel terrible saying it, but it's true. So as a kid, I kind of did a lot of that. But like any other kid, like I loved Legos. And so I was always building things and I'd go to a friend's house with a box of Legos and I'd throw them on the floor and he or she would throw theirs on the floor and they'd all mix together and then we'd bake. It was time to go home. We just grabbed whatever you wanted and put it back in your box. And And so I thought that was really, really great. And today I have little kids, and they use their imagination as with Legos as well too. But now it's about following the rules, and the rules are the book. And if it's not, in the book, then it doesn't belong. It's just getting them to think outside the book and outside the
Yeah,
rules, and creating things that don't exist. And it's really fun to challenge kids and yourself to think outside the rules. And curiosity always kind of really kills me when like my favorite thing in the world is when people are waiting in line and the line keeps getting longer and longer, but on the other right next to the line is no line, but everyone's
that
too
is,
afraid to go
yeah.
there because the curiosity, well, I don't want to, it's too, yeah, it just blows my mind. And so, I I don't know what I'm talking about.
Hey, we're gonna keep rolling though. I'll bring you back. Anyhow, I want to get back to your career path, and at one point you were considering going to law school, and I'd love to hear more about what pulled you away from that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how, man, there's, and you're under the gauntlet of pressure, right? There's all
Hmm.
this expectation to kind of have it figured out by the time you're in
Hmm.
college, before you get to college, perhaps, of what you want to do and where you want to go and what you want to be when you grow up and all these great things. And a lot of times for some people it's easy, right? My mom or dad was, in the Air Force or was a doctor or was a lawyer, and so you're predisposed to just follow that path because it's really comfortable for you and makes you feel happy and fulfilled. And for most of us, we honestly don't know. And so you get to college and there's this pressure to kind of have it figured out. And for me, my fundamentally, I wanted to do something that would leave a positive impact on our natural environment. And so I really wanted to find a way where I could conserve, preserve, restore, whatever I could do to have a positive impact. And so for me, I felt like law was a great avenue for multiple reasons. Number one, I felt like I could help write legislation or um, uh, support legislation or get people to follow rules that they may not agree with, but or we're going to help everyone else, in a larger scope, everything from water quality to air quality to even just indigenous, rights and land ownership. And I thought it'd be a ton of fun. I thought it would be fulfilling. I thought I would be able to do good in the world. And then there's a prestige with being a lawyer where I thought it would be an honorable career and potentially I
Hmm.
could, you know, make some money and live a comfortable life, right? And so then I started down the law school path, and I was taking environmental studies, American law. I'm sorry, American government, constitutional law, and all these prereqs, and then preparing for the LSATs. And as I'm preparing for the LSATs and taking all of these kind of I don't know, law kind of classwork, I I just felt disillusioned with law for a number of reasons, right? That the main reason is conflict, and to me, and I was interning at an environmental law firm my senior year in Harrisburg, and law is a great profession, and and I work with lawyers all the time because I have to, and but it's always, to me, feels like we're resolving or creating conflict, and to always have this stress of fighting or defending was just exhausting, and that's just not the type of life that I wanted. And then once I kind of dug in even deeper, I'm like, man, like here I am upholding, defending, and trying to rewrite rules that were written, with an infrastructure, 100 plus years ago that don't really correlate to the life that I'm and we're living today, that I don't really even think I believe in. And here I want to uphold. I was like, oh my God, like, it's just, what am I thinking? And I got out, right,
Yeah.
and I was really bummed because I thought I had it figured out. And I thought I was so excited. Like whenever you know what you want and you can focus and pour your energy into it, it's really exciting. And my parents were excited. And, my mom, just I'm so proud of him. He's going to be a lawyer. Oh, so she doesn't talk like that, but I like to believe that she does. And so, your family's really proud. And then, I dropped out of the LSAT course and I graduated the degree in environmental studies. And I was pretty bummed because I thought that I had it all figured out. And then when I graduated, I just said to myself, you know what? Instead of chasing a job or trying to get back into school, because I felt safe in school and I loved the university and I really wanted to go back to the university because I felt really comfortable there.
Right.
I'm like, all right, well, instead I'm going to flip it on its head. Instead of going to look for the work, I want to go live somewhere where I want to live and I'll find work. And I don't care what it is, I'll find it.
Interesting.
And so I grew up in Pennsylvania. I really thought I belonged in California because I have long hair, but I don't listen to the Grateful Dead or Fish. I listen to kind of like, heavy metal, more rock music. I look like I probably do a lot of drugs, but I'm pretty straight edge. I don't do
allegedly
anything. Maybe I'll drink. Yeah, no one. I better not ever run for office. And then and so like I just and I like to exercise and I'm outside all the time. And I just didn't know where I belonged. And so I kind of felt like I was a freak. Like there was no one else like me. Living in Pennsylvania, eating natural foods and being organic and wanting to save the environment and having long hair, but lifting weights and playing basketball and listening to heavy metal, and I felt like a freak. And so one of my friends is like, dude, you know where all the freaks are? Like they're in San Francisco. That's where your people are in California. So I'm like, all right, let's go look for my people. So truthfully, I just want to get out of Pennsylvania because I never left and I was ready to travel. Go ahead.
I want to pause right here because I just had a conversation about this and I think it's really pertinent. One thing that we were talking about in my last conversation was a lot of people feel like they're on this island and that they are a freak. And you mentioned like, I feel like I'm a freak here in Pennsylvania and they have no idea what to do about it. But I'm so glad, and I'm sure you are too, that you stepped out and you went on that journey to find where your people are. Because we were talking about, there's literally like 7.5 billion people on the planet. There's going to be somebody similar to you somewhere. You just got to find it. So anyways, continue.
No, but it's so true. I grew up in a town where you either never leave or you never go back, right? And once you leave, you're like, holy crap, there's a whole world out here. And my town that I grew up in is great. I'm very grateful that I got the chance to see a little more. So anyway, so in California, I'm living in the Bay Area, and I found a job waiting tables.
Nice.
And I was there for about a year. It was actually just like maybe a few months, not even, maybe a few weeks. I'm living in the city, staying at hostels and people's couches, just graduated. And while I'm in San Francisco, right, like I met some really freaky people. And I realized that I'm pretty square, right? I don't have some like really weird things going on. I'm pretty, run of the mill kind of guy. And so I really enjoyed California, and I realized, hey, the ocean is really awesome and beautiful. And I found a small town called Point Reyes, where I lived for about a year north of the city, and waited tables there. And then after about a year, I was like, all right, well, I love it here, but the mountains are my calling. So I think my people were in the mountains. So let's start exploring the mountains. And then I also said to myself, well, I want to set myself up for success. So I want to live somewhere that's near the mountains, but also has a university either in the town or really close by, because I want to get residency. Because if I decide to go back to school and something inspires me and I'm ready to go back to school, I want to make sure that I'm setting myself up. So I looked at Bozeman, Missoula. I looked at Boulder, and I looked at Boise. And mostly just these mountain kind of bigger towns, and a buddy of mine went to CU Boulder, went to a graduate school out here, and he's like, dude, Boulder's great. You're close to the mountains. There's a cool town here. The farmers market's really big, and you should start here. And I was like, all right, I don't know anyone in Boulder, but I'll start there. Sounds great. And so I got to Boulder and found a job immediately waiting tables, which was nice. And and I found my people. Like I found people who love to be outside and who were athletes in their own way. Not just a very scripted like to be an athlete you must perform well at these three things. They did. They were skiing and mountain biking and climbing and kayaking and doing all these high athletic pursuits that involved a lot of skill and athleticism. And then they took care of their bodies, and people were really curious about the food they eat and curious about what they put in their body and where their clothes came from. And I love that sense of curiosity. And then it was just a really beautiful place. And so, all right, well, I'm going to stick around here. And then I was just waiting for something to basically motivate me to get purpose and inspiration to go back to school. And I knew that with my environmental policy undergraduate degree, it was a great entry level degree to get me really into anything, but it didn't give me enough. What's the right word here? Enough, I don't know, credibility or enough
Clout.
Yeah, I guess maybe experience or education to really like focus in on something. And so I
Yeah.
figured I would, when something inspired me, I'd go back.
What were
And
you
it's
thinking of
interesting,
going back to school for? It sounds like you were super focused on like making sure you got back into a university somewhere. What was the drive there?
I think it's familiarity and a sense of comfort. I feel like
Yeah.
my grandma instilled in me that, you can never have too much education and you can never learn too
Hmm.
much. And so I really figured that the more I learned, the more doors that would open for me. And what I did learn about college, which I'm really grateful for, is I don't think an undergraduate degree teaches you how to work in a career, right? A trade school would, and they're fantastic, and an MBA or a CPA or some kind of focus might or would after you graduate. But what a 4-year degree does is teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to take information, how to organize that information, and how to display or recite or explain that information, really. And I think that's all really fundamental, and I think it's really important. And so I was really glad that I had my degree, but I felt like I needed more. And so I'm working in Boulder. I'm waiting tables, and I'm living with probably 3 or 4 roommates, and we were living on a shoestring. And so I
Hmm.
was eating and being really active and being outdoors and being a vegetarian. I became a vegetarian when I was in college, and I didn't really even know that being a vegetarian was a thing, right? You just grow up eating whatever is in front of you, and you don't really ask where it came from or complain. You just eat it. And even though I did complain, I didn't want to eat everything. And so, anyways, I'm in college, and we went and what I loved about my university was we did all these amazing field trips, and we traveled all over the area, and we visited landfills, which I'm obsessed with. We visited wastewater treatment facilities. We visited power plants. We visited a coal power plant. We visited 3 Mile Island, which was a nuclear power plant that almost had a meltdown in Pennsylvania near Philly, or no, sorry, near Harrisburg. And we visited dairy farms, and we visited meatpacking facilities. And we visited the meatpacking plant. The whole class came back vegetarian, right? Like there was no exceptions. And then after about a week, people started to slowly start eating meat again,
Hmm.
and I just
Hmm.
stopped eating it, and I just didn't miss it. And it wasn't this big. It was a lot of things. The first thing was I just didn't miss it. Some people are like, "Oh my God, it's been like 3 days since I had a cheeseburger." Oh my, who wants to go out and get a cheeseburger? And I was like, "No, man, I'm good. Like I don't miss it. I don't need it." And what was funny is I ended up, um, like just feeling healthier. I just felt better. My body
Interesting.
felt better. I slept better. My mind was clearer. And so I just stopped eating meat and never really looked back. And so then, living in Colorado and being a vegetarian and always being outdoors and
Hmm.
outside, I was eating a lot of peanut butter because peanut butter
Yep.
is cheap protein, right? Not that almond butter stuff. You got to be careful You don't put almond butters in your smoothie. That's an expensive smoothie. I'm
Hey,
just
it
kidding. Do
tastes
whatever you
good
want.
though. It
Tell your
tastes
mom I
good.
said thank you.
I will. I will.
And so I I was just eating a lot of peanut butter, and it was curiosity, right, Jake? So you're at the grocery store, 20 whatever years ago, and you're like, all right, let me get this straight. There are 30 different types of jam, preserves, jellies, whatever, because there's so many different kinds. And there's 2 types of peanut butter, 30, and then there's smooth and there's crunchy. Like, I don't understand it. What am I missing? And then you're like, all right, wait. So let me get straight. I eat a handful of almonds and it tastes amazing. But when I buy the one brand of almond butter in the store, it tastes terrible. And why? How hard is it to make peanut butter? Oh, look, you can grind your own right there in the store. Let me grind some peanut butter. That was pretty easy. How hard can this be? Then you go home and you figure out, okay, I just need a food processor. So then I started like adding all these ingredients and peanuts and almonds and I didn't just add ingredients and just kind of fool around. I was like, all right, let's make this a project. So I had a little book. Where's my book? Oh, it's upstairs. So I had a book, and I would take my book and I'd write down, version 1, and I would be like, okay, peanuts and honey, 2 ingredients. How hard can this be? Let's put some salt in there. 3 ingredients. How hard can this be? And before you know it, you're like, all right, well, that was too salty. That was too sweet. That's not sweet enough. I don't touch any salt in it. It's just, three items can be like 13 or 14 recipes. And then you're adding cinnamon, and then you're adding, almonds and cashews and chocolate syrup and whatever else you can find in the house. And you're like, all right, well, bananas. Why does anyone put bananas in peanut butter? And you're like, all right, I'm gonna get fresh bananas. You take fresh bananas and you put it in, and oh, this is delicious. Wow. And you leave it out, and the next day you go to eat some more, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? This is terrible. You're like, all right, well, let's try dried banana. Let's try freeze-dried banana. Let's try banana syrup, everything. And I just started like keeping track of it and having fun. And my roommates thought it was totally a hoot, and they'd, laugh and we, try them. And then I'd put all these experiments, in like the cupboard and the fridge and all these places. And they started finding their favorites and finishing the jars. And I had to start writing like Justin's or do not touch, all over them.
This might be, Justin, this might be a little beyond your time, but I think in the early 2000s, there was a movie put out by Disney called Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. I think it's a little beyond your time, but anyways, there's a scene from it. And
I don't know it.
He's going to be in a competition to compete against Bobby Flay or something like that. And there's a scene at like 11 o'clock at night, and he's down in his kitchen and he's mixing like 100 different things together. And then at the end of it, he puts it all on 2 pieces of bread, and it's like a peanut butter jelly, Skittles, M&M, and a bunch of different things sandwich. But anyways, your story just reminded me of that. And I think everybody that's seen that movie is going to resonate with that really well. And they'll probably think of that when you were talking. But anyways, go ahead.
So much fun,
I know where this is going. Go ahead.
Well, I think that fundamentally, that's the fun part, right? It's the creative part.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to explore and create and use your ideas and test your ideas out on people. And food is so fabulous because you get an instant reaction from someone, right? It's not, you don't have to like go home and plant it or wear it for a week or, instantly you can get a reaction, and everyone has an opinion about food. And so what was interesting was my roommates really encouraged me. Hey, have you ever thought about turning this into a business? Like, have you ever thought about selling these at the store, at the farmer's market? And literally I was just like, kind of, but how do you do that? And I was like, well, I guess, a business plan. Like people always, I think I learned that in college, or someone mentioned like a business plan is where I should start. I'm like, all right, well, how you write a business plan? Well, I don't know. And this is kind of before, Google had, everything all over the internet, and you could find all this pretty easily now, which is fantastic. And so, but the one thing I really loved and I miss, and I still do love, and I do it all the time, is go to the library And wouldn't you know it, living in a college town had its benefits because CU, Colorado University here in Boulder, has a business school. And in the business school is a business library. And the library has a full selection of resources. It has everything from LexisNexis, where I can pull out articles on, all these entrepreneurs and people, to, literally there's a whole encyclopedia of business plans from A to Z, where real life businesses that were successful, they submitted their business plans and they put them into these encyclopedias, and those encyclopedias were in the school, and I could literally be like, oh look, here's a tomato canning company. That's interesting. Instead of cans, I'll use jars. Instead of tomatoes, I use peanuts. And label's a label, and it kind of fundamentally got me to understand how to build a cog spreadsheet, and how to look for margin, and what type of manufacturing questions I should have, and I kind of slowly started to lay out this business plan. And no kidding, like as I'm on like the first section of the plan, right? What type of business entity do you want to be? And this is like lawyer stuff. I don't want to get into any of this. It's like you want to be a C corp, an S corp, an
Yeah.
LLC, a sole proprietorship, a partnership. And I'm just like, oh, like I have no idea. And I'm sure it's really important to pick one and pick the right one. And I'm like, well, I wonder if there's anyone in the Boulder community who started a food company, and I would just ask them and get their feedback and input. And what was really fascinating was not only were there a lot of famous, really successful companies in the natural food industry in Boulder, but how forthright people were at wanting to help and to share their story. And everything from developing a UPC to becoming organic to finding the FDA food labeling laws, and to finding how to create a nutrition panel, to how to find manufacturing locations and distribution, and how to get into Whole Foods, and all of these questions that I had, which were very, very specific to a food product, I could find right here. And I found people from Silk, which is White Wave,
Yep.
from Horizon Organic Dairy, from Izzy Soda, Rudy's Organic Bread, Celestial Seasonings, which I started the movement here. And at the same time, Noosa Yogurt was developing, and Choco Love was developing. And so I really had this great family of brands and people to help me. And that's when I really kind of understood the importance, A, of asking for help. Generally, people want to help, and B, surrounding myself with people who were much smarter than I am, and who had something that I wanted, who were basically mentors. And to this day, I still have now I have a network of mentors, and every mentor provides something unique in their own way to help guide me in my life. And they don't even know they're my mentors. They're just good people who want to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so this is the early days of Justin's that you're at right now in your story. Um, at the same time, I'm assuming you were still working another job, probably as a server somewhere. So at what point did you realize that
Mm.
this was going to be the main thing? And at what point did you actually take the jump and pull out of the other job or jobs that you were working?
It's weird, brother. So God, I always knew it was going to be successful. I don't know why or how, but I just did. And but I didn't act like it, right? I knew in my heart and knew in my mind this was a good idea, and I just had to get out there quickly. But it wasn't like, burn the ship, let's party, woo! It was like, all right, well, you know, what am I going to do to protect myself? And um, so I honestly had 5 coworkers or employees, and I was still working. And I paid everyone first in the company. I paid myself last, because the way I looked at it is, if I can employ people and pay them first and pay them a good living wage, then they're going to help me grow this company, and which is ultimately going to benefit, at the end of the day, me. So I want to make sure that they're happy and they're taken care of, and I'll find a way to take care of myself. And so I was waiting tables, and then the waiting tables was really hard. It really it took a ton of energy and a ton of time, and I was always exhausted. And so I wanted to switch gears, but I still needed a part-time job. And so I decided I wanted to find a job that was part-time, and I wanted to do something that I've always wanted to do. And I said to myself, I said, Gold, my last name's Gold. So whenever I talk to myself in first person and third person, it's always Gold. I'm like, Gold, what would be a dream job to have as your last job working for somebody else? Right? And seriously, Jake, like think about it. What would be your dream job?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm too old to work at an ice cream scoop shop, so that probably won't work out. Movie theater would be fun, but that'd be kind of boring. Oh man, I want to work at like REI. I want to work at an adult toy store. That didn't sound good either. I want to work at a sporting goods store for toys and
That's a
outdoor
different kind of
activities.
dream. That's a different kind of dream, Justin.
Or a nightmare for others.
Yeah, well, maybe.
And so I wanted to work at REI. I wanted to work at an outdoor gear store, and so I applied, and I got a job at REI, and I wore a green vest, and I worked at customer service, and I got to take back shoes and work on skis and camping and all that fun stuff, and I took the job really serious, and I loved it, and I was really good at it, and I loved learning about the gear, and I love learning about the activities and the places to go. And you'd come in and people are excited to be there. They're going to go on adventure and they want to gear up for the adventure. And so I really enjoyed that atmosphere, and it was a dream for me. And then I made a goal, because once I was at REI, I said, okay, success for me is when I can sell my products to REI, and then REI has to fire me out of basically a oh Jesus, what is it, Jake?
Conflict of
Not an
interest.
interference, but it's a conflict of interest. Yeah, and then REI has to let me go. That would be great, That was kind of like my goal, and and so then I was working part time at REI, and REI was great because I got full benefits, health benefits at part time.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so I'm working at REI and I'm working at Justin's, and I was able to make it work for about almost 5 years. I worked at both Justin's and REI. And then when I had, over 5 employees, I left and did Justin's full time because I got our products into REI. I was able to pay myself, $30,000 or $40,000, which is just is all that I needed, to live where I was. And it was pretty neat. It felt really special when I was able to set a goal and accomplish it like that.
Mm-hmm. And well, fast forward the last 20 years, I mean, Justin's has obviously seen a ton of growth, and congratulations to you and your team, by the way, for pulling that off and bootstrapping it through the first few years. Very, very impressive. I got to ask about time management, just out of personal interest for myself, because I know with a fast growing brand like that, there's probably unlimited amount of hours you could probably work on it. And I'm curious to hear what you've done to prioritize personal time and family time amidst all of that.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So let's just kind of be honest about it, right? So I don't care how old you are or how many kids you have. If you're starting a company, if you're gonna, take the plunge and go for it, there's no balance at the beginning, right? It's 110%. It's all in all the time to make it work. Now, that doesn't mean you still can't do some of the things you love, like sleep or eat or, go on a run or something, but you have to make sacrifices, right? And those sacrifices are staying late, getting up early, working over the weekend, whatever it is. And so when I first started, I felt very lucky because I didn't have children, I didn't have kids, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have a dog. So I had the freedom and flexibility to to drive somewhere to do an event over a weekend, to hand out samples, to do a farmer's market, to stay up all night working on a new recipe, or rewriting the business plan for the 30th time. And so I could do all that. And then you get to a point where one of two things happen, right? Either you feel like that you've made enough success where you can fold in more, fun things in your life. And that can be in, a few months or a few years. It really depends on you personally, on the business personally. And so you either figure out, okay, well, I can take a deep breath. I set out what I need to do. I'm going to, you know, find a way to balance and to juggle more activities, or you're going to go crazy. And you're like, holy, and you get to a point where you're like, okay, if I don't take the day off, if I don't take the weekend off, I'm going to go totally insane. I'm going to do something I'll regret. So then you have to kind of know your own balance, and then your and the needs of the business. But it's really hard when you first start. There really isn't any balance, and then you either achieve it or you have to find it. Now, with that said, I would still, find time to, I live in Colorado and I chose to live here. So for me, I can go ride my bike for 2 hours, or for, an hour, go on a hike or a trail run and feel recharged and feel great. I'm not, driving for a long weekend somewhere. It's right in my backyard. And I think
Hmm.
being in Colorado and having that sense of freedom to be outside was really helpful.
And do you still live in Boulder?
Yes, love Boulder.
You do? Okay, cool. Yeah, I have a friend or two that goes to school out there, and I haven't been to Boulder, but another friend of mine goes to the Air Force Academy, so I've spent a lot of time down in Colorado Springs, and then we went skiing in the
Yeah,
mountains a couple of times at Breck. So absolutely love it out in Colorado. Also considering living there at some point, just like yourself. So um,
yeah, it's great.
I do want to ask about you selling Justin. So in 2016, Justin's was sold, and I want to hear a little bit about the motivation behind that.
Yeah, so difference, right? There's a difference. Justin's wasn't sold. Justin's was
Okay.
bought, right? Big difference. On a lot of reasons. And so if you, I always tell entrepreneurs, your goal isn't to build a business that you're going to go out there someday and sell. Your
Hmm.
goal is to build a business that someone's going to want to come along and buy, right? I didn't start Justin's thinking, okay, well, if I just, you know, make a food product, and then, on December, on 2016, on 3 o'clock, I'm going to go out there and see who, and try to sell it,
Hmm.
and dang it, and someone's going to pay a lot of money for it. You just build a great business, and if the time's right for you and the time's right in the universe, someone will come and want to buy it. Now, it doesn't always work like that, but that's where you
Hmm.
start, right? And at some point, you may have had, I don't know, a dental practice, and you've been practicing dentistry for 40 years and you want to retire, and now you want to retire. And so now you go out and try to sell it, right?
Hmm.
But I could have never, Justin's could have never been bought. And I'd still be, running it day to day and would still love that. And so what happened was, two things. Number one is I took private equity money,
Okay.
which which was a circumstance of how I wanted to grow the business. And
Okay.
the reason why I did that was when this will all come back to how Justin's was bought.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so in 2002-ish, 3-ish, I kind of started. And then by 2004-ish, we had a jars. And then by 2008-ish, we had squeeze packs. And so 2008, 2009 changed everything, because the squeeze pack was really a first for the category, was extremely innovative. And I had this healthy sense of paranoia that if I didn't grow this fast and be first, that someone else would just do it and steal it. I couldn't protect peanut butter. I couldn't protect the squeeze pack. I was the first person to kind of like put together and sell it and market it commercially. And so there was no IP, there's no protection. So I knew that anyone could do this. And I wanted to be first. And that sense of, I don't want to call it fear, but let's just say paranoia, drove a really important decision. And that decision was, if I'm going to grow fast, I need to hire seasoned professionals to come into my organization and help me run this faster than I would, because I'm going to make a lot of mistakes trying to figure this out, where I can hire someone who's going to be expensive and they'll have already made a lot of those mistakes, and we'll make more mistakes together, and that's okay, but we won't make any big ones together, hopefully. And so so first thing is I raised money from angel investors, and I found angel
Mm-hmm.
investors here locally. And then the second thing, and as the company was growing and continued to be successful, and you wanted to grow into Walmart and grow into Target and grow into Kroger and keep growing into Whole Foods and launch new products and new categories, that all costs money. You need the money to buy into the store. Buying into a store is one case is free per store per item, and that adds up. How many targets are there? A few thousand targets. That adds up. Almond butter ain't cheap. And so all that led to me having to raise money. And
Mm-hmm.
when you raise money, right, guess what? Like, you got to pay the people back. And so there's an
Yep.
expectation there that at some point the business, is going to pay that person back. Now, it doesn't mean you have to sell the business. You can take out bank debt. You can use cash flow to pay people back over time. There's a lot of different ways you can, pay off your investors. And as we're running the business, and we had peanut butter cups and squeeze packs and all this fun stuff going on, we were doing really, really well, and we continue to do well. And people were noticing us, and they were like, "Hey, have you ever thought about selling?" "Oh, never. We're having way too much fun." And
Mm-hmm.
and the guys at Hormel who own Skippy came by, and they're like, "Hey, we really like what you're doing. We'd love to talk about." No, 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 no. And maybe it was psychological, but they kept coming back. And when they came back again, I said, "Okay, wait. Before you say no, just why would you say no? Like, what are the fears that you have about us buying your business?" And I said, "Well, it's easy. Number one, you guys, I don't think, value natural and organic. So you're not going to offer, the value money wise that this company is worth. And then I think you're just going to change the brand. You're going to use cheaper ingredients, and you're going to, degrade the mission, vision, and values that we stand for. And that's not why I built this. I don't want to watch that happen." And I said, "Aha, well, what if we told you that we love what you're doing because we want to learn, and some of it's different from what we're doing, and that's kind of the space we want to grow as an organization. So we'll just accelerate all of that, and we'll give you and your investors this much money." And I was like, "Wow!" And I can continue to stay on at Justin's and run it and keep growing it and get all my investors out of the business. And they're like, "Yeah, this is the future we want, which is the same future that I want." And so they came along. They bought us, and they paid, a really fair, good value for what we were doing, and they reinforced what we're already doing, which I'm really proud of, right? But let's be honest with ourselves. At the end of the day, we have to perform, right? And so, Jake,
Mm-hmm.
so if consumers aren't buying natural and organic, or if Justin's doesn't meet their need for on price expectation or quality expectations or packaging expectations, and they don't buy our products and they buy other products, Hormel has the right to do whatever they want with this company, which I may not agree with and might break my heart. But if we continue to make products that we think consumers want, which are high quality, sustainable, natural and organic, highly conscious, to a point where we're, giving away and supporting a lot of nonprofits and charities. We care about pollinators. We care about palm oil. We care about pesticides. We care about feeding, hungry nations and people here in our own communities. If those consumers continue to show up and buy our products because they taste good and do good, I think we're going to be just fine. We just got to keep
Yeah.
doing that. Now, if
Yeah.
consumers decide they don't want those things and they don't buy our products, then we'll be in trouble. And guess what? If we were owned by a big company or owned by ourselves, we'd still be in trouble.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me because I think a lot of people think about the acquisition process as a way to exit a company. And from a lot of the interviews that I've done so far, a lot of people that do get acquired, they decide to stay on,
All of them.
like you
Oh,
have,
they do?
and it, not all of them, but a lot of them have. And the interesting thing is they don't see it as an exit strategy. They see it as a growth strategy. So for you, I think it was interesting because you now have access to all of Hormel's distribution across the globe, and all of the resources of the company, most likely. And I don't know what your deal looks like with them, but for somebody I was talking with today, it was a really similar situation. They got acquired by a much larger company. They stayed on, and it enabled them to grow exponentially and see the growth and see the impact that their business has in the rest of the world. And so I think it's just really fascinating. A lot of people think about it as an exit strategy, whereas most of the time, the people that are running the show see it as a way to grow the business and have a bigger impact.
Yeah, that's extremely observant, and that is true. And I think it's fascinating too, because I think it really shows the motivations behind the founders and or management teams, right? Because if they sell the company and immediately leave the company, this is all about money, right? It's just about
Mm-hmm.
making money, and that's fine. If you can find
Yeah,
a
well,
way
yeah,
to
right,
do
right, right, right,
good
right, right, right. Yeah,
and
right.
build a great business that helps humanity and helps the environment, I mean, and then you get burned out and you want to move on to something else, that's great. Hopefully it wasn't all about the money, and
Yeah.
and for the founders who stay on, because now they have all these resources and greater opportunities to hopefully do good and drive change and drive awareness, that's powerful. That's really awesome. And I hope that I can, do something else someday and do all kinds of fun stuff. And right now I'm really tied to a lot of nonprofits here that are all around basically wilderness areas, and how we can, educate people to interact in wilderness areas and protect these lands so that way they're here for future generations. And that I'm really passionate about that. And then I sit on a bunch of boards and help a lot of other natural food companies, and love sharing all the information that was shared to me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know we're like way, way over time, so I want to respect your time here. And I want to ask you two questions to close us out. And you're alluding to the first one. So first of all, what's next for you and your career and your personal life? And then secondly, if there's anything that you'd want to leave people listening with today, what would that be?
Yeah. So let's ask the second question again in a moment so I don't forget it, Jake. I think
Okay.
what's next for me is, it's wild. I want to do a lot. I want to do everything, right? And it's so friggin' hard. It comes back to time management. I want to be an amazing father. I want to be an amazing husband. I want to be a great citizen in my community, and fight for the things I think are important. I want to volunteer, and I have been volunteering a lot at nonprofits here. There's several nonprofits. One around hunger relief in Pine Ridge specifically, called Conscious Alliance, that I think is really important. I don't think it's fair the way we've treated a lot of the natives of this land, and I think that we can do better. And the first thing we need to do is make sure that the children have food and the elders have food, and that way they can go to school and take care of each other. And the other one's around wilderness areas. And there's a nonprofit up here that wants to build a nature center to educate people on how to interact in nature. And everyone's moving to Colorado, which is fantastic. But if you don't know how to take care of all these wilderness lands, they're not going to be here. And so I'm really inspired and excited because it's giving me purpose to really help those organizations. I really want to see Justin's continue to grow and to be one of those brands that I continue to be proud of, and that, is a beacon for other big, other food companies. My ultimate, dream would be that, Hormel learns as much from us as we learn from them. And if we can really kind of what we like to call infect the host and get them to make changes
Mm-hmm.
on things that we think are fundamentally important, man, that'd be incredible. And it will happen. And the way it happens is we have to be successful. And if we're successful, it's validation that this is what, the future of consumerism is. And then, I want to challenge myself. I want to, climb tall mountains and ski really gnarly lines and travel to remote areas and, learn to ride a unicycle and, all the fun, silly stuff that, is when you're a kid you want to do, and then you get in your 40s and you're like, holy shit, I still haven't done that. Like, I gotta start. It's not a bucket list per se. I'm not that old, but I'm getting there. But it's
Yeah,
just stuff
yeah.
that you've always wanted to do, and read a lot of books, learn another language, and go hunting, and all the other things that, I think would be really cool. And then, to your last question, remind me again,
Well, so
something that
before I ask you
everyone
again,
should learn.
yeah, and you brought up
Good.
something really important there. And there's only so much time in your life, but you can do literally anything you want, but you can't do everything you want. And I'll ask the question again. It was if you could share one piece of advice with anybody, or just anything that you're passionate about, what would it be?
Wait a minute. You dropped some pretty fancy wisdom there. You can do anything that
Any,
you want, but
yeah,
you can't do everything that you want.
right.
I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to challenge that. I think that's awesome. That's actually really insightful. Um, wow, can I do everything that I want? It's probably illegal in most states and countries, so maybe not everything. You're right. Okay, Jake, you got one on me.
I did. I did.
All right, so the one piece of advice that I would leave people, and this is the truth. I see this with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think that inherently we're so hung up on failure that
Mhm.
sometimes we just don't start because we want to do it. We want to be perfect, and we want to launch something that looks perfect and that is absolutely perfect. And it's impossible. And so I tell a lot of entrepreneurs that if you don't start somewhere, you'll never end up anywhere. And and there's this paralysis around just getting started
Mhm.
because we're not sure if this is the right product, if it's, the right price, the right niche, the right um, flavor, the right whatever. And you tell people, look, just start, launch it, and see what happens, right? You might knock it out of the park, right, on your first swing. Doubt it, but you might. What will happen is if you miss, you're going to have to pay attention and understand why you missed, and then make the adjustments and pivot. But if you don't start somewhere, you'll never end up anywhere. And so it's been really fun because I think it's true for almost every entrepreneur. Is you launch a service, you launch a product, and you thought it was going to deliver this, and instead consumers demanded that, and the rest is history. But you have
Yep.
to listen, and you have to be able to make adjustments, and you have to be able to take criticism, you have to be able to pivot. And I think that's what separates, you know, entrepreneurs from business owners. A business owner is the way we do it. This is the way it's always been done. This is the way that I learned, and this is the way we're going. And an entrepreneur is like, whoa, 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 this isn't working. This isn't working. Okay, let's change this. Let's try that. Okay, and then you just keep kind of moving. And I think that's really important.
That's really great advice, Justin. And to validate it for you on the spot, for anybody that's listening out there, I would encourage you to go to the Justin's website, go to the About Us page, and take a look at the first jar of Justin's butter. Um, it's come a long way. It's come a long way in the last 20 or so years. But seriously, I mean, it started from a jar that you had in your fridge or on the counter, and now we have this wonderful piece of work and an incredible company behind you. So, Justin, thanks again for coming on today. It was absolutely my pleasure to sit down with you and interview you, and I hope to stay in touch.
Thanks, Jake. Hope to have you in Colorado. See you, buddy.